Fred Topel from Crave Online. Unfortunately, I have to bring Don Mancini's regrets. He had a family emergency and couldn't be here. And I have to tell you, he was so apologetic for everything he was going through. He was really concerned that he didn't get to see this with an audience. He loves this movie. But we do have a lot of people from the movie here. Let's bring them all up. We have Brad Dourif, Jennifer Tilly. Thank you all for being here. I'll take questions as soon as I see hands up. Alexis, I have always wanted to ask you, did you play this character as Damien or Howard Fitzwater?
Well, I mean, there was a shot at Howard at the end. It's just sort of like the Brian Warner question. If Marilyn Manson gets a lot. I guess you can't really kill the inner nerd from the goth god. So yeah,
Jennifer, when you were cast in this role, did you have any involvement in the design of Tiffany so that she would resemble you?
Well, actually, a lot of the clothes that I wore in the movie was my own clothes. And I read an article where the costumer was complaining and they said, oh, these Hollywood types, you wanted to wear her Gucci high heels and, you know, all their designer gowns. And I was thinking, well, wouldn't you? But, yes, you know, I did bring a big supply of push-up bras, and we tried to, the doll was already made, so we were in the position of trying to make myself look like the doll. But it was a lot of fun.
That's gorgeous.
Thank you.
And Brad, it had been, there was Child's Play 1, 2, and 3, and then it had been several years before they got Bride of Chucky together. Did you ever think you would see him again at this point?
Yeah. I mean, you know, by the time we did Bride, Chucky was pretty iconic. So I mean, you know, when there's money to be made, people will make it. I just Bride's my favorite of them. Of course, except for my daughter's in it.
I understand it's Don Mancini's favorite, too. Where does it stand with you, Jennifer? Because you've been in a few.
Mike?
Well, I was watching Bride tonight, and I fell asleep for a little bit because I only had 2 hours of sleep last night. But it struck me what a beautiful film it was, and it was directed by the famous Hong Kong director Ronnie Yu, and I thought he really treated the characters with respect. I mean, he shot it like a love story, and especially one of my favorite death scenes ever is when I'm in the bathtub and the TV goes in the bathtub, and the sort of the juxtaposition between Bride of Chucky and Bride of Frankenstein, I thought was particularly poetic.
All right. I'll have to project.
Yes, play to the Black Road, Jennifer.
Are there any questions out there in the back? In the way back with the beanie. No? Next to him?
Next to the beanie.
Did you guys do all of your dialogue together as Chucky and Tiffany when you recorded it?
That's a big yes.
Wow, that's cool.
You know, they set up, this is the first time that I met Brad. And of course, I was very excited because he's a brilliant Oscar-nominated actor. And I met him. Only the brilliant Oscar-nominated actors. And they set up these two rooms so we could look at each other while we were acting, and we could overlap.
Having sex.
Yes, exactly. Like I ad-libbed the line, Chucky, do you have a rubber? And he ad-libbed, honey, look at me, I'm all rubber. We ad-libbed that. And they had us, we could overlap, like if I thought of something funny to say or he thought of something funny to say, we would just say it, and a lot of it ended up in the movie. But it was also, too, when I was looking at him, Actually, during the scene where my character dies and his character, you know, when they're about to die, I looked over at him and he was crying and I was crying too. So I think they're not just like dolls. I mean, to us, they're real people. But I think it helped that we were in the room recording together. And since then, I've done a lot of voiceovers, like I do Family Guy. You never see the other actors. And I was very spoiled from doing the voiceover with Brad because I think you get a better performance when you're actually in the room with the other actor.
I got to say, I've done 3 movies, and you do the sound before you do the movie. So I was in a studio by myself for 2 days doing the whole movie, and it is lonely. And it was such a relief. It was such a relief to be able to really work off somebody. I mean, we had a ball.
And after we finished, Brad looked at the producers and he said, "Why didn't I get a girlfriend earlier?"
Yeah, the mic's still off. I saw another question in front of the last one, and then I see you and you. Yellow shirt.
My question's for Brad Dourif. You're a horror icon at this point with Chucky. I was just wondering what it was like to work with another horror icon, Christopher Lee in the Lord of the Rings pictures.
Yes, what was it like to work with Christopher Lee? Guy's a really good actor, man. You know, I mean, it was Christopher Lee is. Yeah, he's Dracula, and I have to say that everybody teased him relentlessly about it, about being Dracula, because we had a lot of knighted actors there, all of which were Syrian. We had 2 Syrians. So yeah, it was great, and he was fun and way more experienced than I was, and I did PR with him. We did foreign press, and that son of a gun greeted every single person in their own language.
Wow.
And I felt like, I'm Brad, West Virginia, and I might speak up. You know, so yeah, he was a pretty awesome guy.
In the second row here.
Yeah, for Brad and for Jennifer, you guys both spent time on screen as the characters. Were you guys, either one of you, worried about whether you could carry the movie just as a voice, or were you that confident in Don's conception that you didn't have any worries about it?
You obviously didn't see Dune or Bullets Over Broadway. You would know. These are 2 fine.
Well, it was very interesting because we did the voiceover, and then when we saw the movie, I was just pleasantly surprised with all the interesting things that they had Tiffany do and the Chucky doll do, like a lot of the little side gags. When they had the Chucky doll, he had, I think, he had about 8 people working him, and so one would work the right arm and one would work the left arm. I remember Alexis came back after she was
molested.
Molested. She said, "Watch out for left arm," because the left arm reached out and like squeezed her nipple.
Big time.
Yeah. Yes, and he was tied up to the bed, so we couldn't do anything about it. And I did notice that left arm was very, very frisky. Like, left arm grabbed me a couple times, too.
Who wouldn't? I would.
But you never really saw the doll. Like, I thought of Chucky as a real person when I was acting with him because the puppeteers were always practicing. So in between the scenes, Chucky would wander around and he'd, like, poke at the craft service food. And, like, when I was in the bathtub, he came over and looked in the bathtub and he was, like, playing with the water and winking at me. And so I really saw him as a sort of irritating little co-star with a personality, because you would think as soon as the scene was over, he would just fall over and be dead, but he wasn't. He was always walking around and like scratching his balls and doing whatever the puppeteers thought was appropriate at the moment.
Jennifer doesn't realize, but she's so in the moment as an actress, that at one point I was post-mortem. It was the one shot when I wasn't like a body double, it was actually me. And she comes over and the music starts to play crazy. and she kicks my leg. And it totally cut my leg open, started bleeding, and I couldn't blink at all. I never told you this. I didn't want you to know. But I was like, don't blink or do not run. But just take the use.
But that was a really long shot where they had the cameras pulling away and you did not blink at all. You must have been into some sort of
sort of pain thing. I was
All right, we've got the mic back. In the middle, orange seat, then the pink sweater, and then in the back.
Yeah, so I was pretty much raised on the first 3 films on VHS, but my parents would never let me see an R-rated movie in a theater for some reason. So I have been begging for years to play Bride of Chucky, as it's one of my top 5 films of all time, and my favorite horror film of all time. And to experience it with this awesome audience for the first time ever was very special to me.
It's a fantastic audience. I'm sorry you've gone missing. You would have loved it.
My question is actually to Jennifer and Alexis. Well, Jennifer, I've met you at the seat of Chucky screenings, and you seem so welcome to the franchise and supportive of the franchise, but coming in 1998, were you a Chucky fan, or had you seen the movies? Did you love the movies? And kind of the same thing.
I had never seen a Chucky movie ever, but I had a hard-on to do a major motion picture. And I have a jewelry addiction. I like to buy jewelry. And my agent called up and he said, Jennifer, we have an offer for you for a major motion picture. And I was cautiously optimistic. And I go, really? And he goes, yes, it's a Universal picture, and they want to pay you this amount of money. And I thought of how many bracelets and rings I could buy for that amount of money. I was getting very excited. And I go, what's it about? And he goes, well, it's about a little doll. And I go, a little doll? And he goes, they kills people. And I went, a Chucky movie! I am never, ever, 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 ever doing a Chucky movie. I had some sort of idea that a horror movie is something you do at the very beginning of your career or at the very end of your career. So, like how Jennifer Aniston did Leprechaun before she was Jennifer Aniston, or Betty Davis did Whatever Happened to Baby Jane long after she'd been Betty Davis for eons and eons. But since I met Don Mancini, I saw the artistry in the Chucky movies. And when I met with him and he was saying they wanted Ronnie Yu to be the director, Peter Powell did the cinematography, won an Oscar a few years later for Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. And then I read the script and I said, wow, this is a really funny script, and I'd never seen a Chucky movie. But the thing that made me want to do it is a friend of mine that I'm really competitive with really wanted to do it, and they're going to go to her next if I said no. And so that was the deciding factor. But I have to say, out of all the movies I've done, Chucky is the #1 movie that people know me from around the world. It's international. Even people that don't speak English, like I'll get off the plane in someplace like Belize, and people point at me and they scream and they go, Chucky, Chucky, Chucky! So it's the Chucky fans are honestly the best fans in the whole world. I'm really happy to be here with such a hip group of people, and really Don was looking forward to, Don Mancini, who created the Chucky movies. He's looking forward to it for so long, for months and months, and I'm sure he would have loved to be here and listen to the wonderful reaction.
Alexis, were you a Chucky fan?
Well, give it up. Now, Don and you are really close now, but were you guys friends before?
No, we were not. I was saying, who let the writer in the room? Because he'd sit in the corner and he'd make suggestions. And in Hollywood, the writer is supposed to be, the writer is supposed to be somebody you keep in a little closet, even though he created the whole thing. And but I got to be very, very close to Don Mancini after that. We started a movie club where we saw movies. Look, you're holding up my microphone. You were never so helpful on the set, Alexis. I was so hot for Alexis. I did a movie with Davey Arquette, his little brother, and Davey is super hot.
You did a lot more than a movie, Jennifer. Let's be real.
Hello. I don't know what he's told you, but it's not true. But then when Alexis came on the set, I was like, oh my God, all the Arquettes are so hot. And I thought that I could convert him. I don't know why. And I would come in the dressing room and he would have his shirt off. He'd be practically naked. And the tattoo artist would be putting tattoos on him. It took about 8 hours to get him into all his tattoos.
Yeah, I tried to wear a little dress in honor of the. I'm still trying to get out. Where's Don? Don was here. I'd hold him down and make sure he gave me the phone number. The assistant to the tattoo guy, whose name was Ghost. Well, we had a lovely afternoon shopping around. You know, another reason why I have had any hesitation about doing this film would only be because I had to have all these letters written because they don't let criminals into Canada. Yeah, if you've ever had a misdemeanor even.
What kind of misdemeanor?
I used to go down to clubs and I had a nudity arrest at one point. And I chose the fetish balls and, you know, every now and then things would slip out.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
And there's always that. But did you know, what, the last movie you were talking about people doing horror towards the end is their career. The last film that Joan Crawford ever did was called Trog. And famous film, fabulous film. She got changed in her car and she drunk the whole time. And did her own hair and makeup. But there was a great line.
Like me.
I implore you to use the hypogon on Trog. So that was the kind of level. But I think that there's nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to this. These films are fantastic, and Brad has proven since day one how really disturbing a doll can be. Come on, that's hard to do, folks. Sorry, you start the question?
Yeah, I do. Well, first of all, Alexis and Jennifer, you ladies look amazing.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And Brad, my favorite show of all time is Deadwood.
Yeah, totally.
Sort of building off the last question, I'm wondering, how important is it to you to do films like this still when you are also doing more, I guess, mainstream films that will be taken more seriously by the industry? However, these films are the ones that are really loved and supported by the fans.
God, first of all, I wish that were true. Yeah. I'm an actor. You know, I will do. I'm also a whore. Working actor. You know, and I do. You know, I take everything as it comes. I mean, you know, you want to do things where you use every part of yourself. I mean, I've lived a lot of. You know, I've had children. I've raised them. You know, I've fallen in love. I've, you know, done everything that human beings do, and you want to express everything that you can express about your life. That's kind of why you're an artist or an actor, or, you know. So I'll take, you know, I just take it as it comes. Sometimes I get lucky, and somebody will cast me in something that's, you know, a little bit more serious. But I also love, you know, just having fun. I have a good time. I mean, I really do. It's really fun, you know. I mean, you get up and you try things, and and it's play.
How many people saw the gruesome Chucky, the last Chucky? And wasn't Brad and his daughter Fiona fantastic in that? Did you ever think your daughter would be in the Chucky movie? Was that one of your hopes and dreams for her?
Fiona came in when I was doing the first Chucky. There's a point at which Chucky is set on fire, and Chucky's got to scream, and you can't like hold back on that. You know, you have to it's a green light thing, and you pace around, and you get ready, and then you just do it. Agonize for her, and it went on for about 3 minutes, and she was in the sound booth and burst into tears and really panicked. And I had to run out afterwards, settle her down, tell her I was fine, not to worry, and so forth. And so that was her first encounter with Chucky. She enjoyed her last one much, much more. And she was really, really thrilled to be in it, and she adores Don. You know, and they cried, I think, when the picture was over. So, And I was very proud, really proud of what she did in that movie. I thought she did good.
In the back, waiting very patiently. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good segue because I wanted to ask about Chris and Chucky, the stinger at the end. That was like, as a longtime Chucky fan, I'm always wondering what happened to Andy. That was a great part of this movie. All wrapped up. Is the saga, or first of all, how did that come about? And second, is that the end of the Chucky Andy story?
So the question is basically, are there going to be any more Chucky movies? Will Andy be involved?
I'm not.
We wish Dawn was here, but I think Dawn is writing the next Chucky movie even as we speak. We did the Comic-Con together in New York, and I think that there was sort of, he was hopeful, the fans were hopeful that he might be in the new movie, but you know, it's all super secret and under wraps. Like, it was supposed to be very secret that I was in the last movie just for a very, very tiny bit, but then the publicity department thought, let's just sell the hell out of Jennifer Tilly being in this movie. Before it even came out, there were all these articles with my one scene, you know, saying that I returned. But I think, you know, there was such a tremendous reaction to that, and I think the thing that Don loves about these movies is he assumes that people are fans, and he assumes that they'll get the inside jokes, and he assumes that they're horror film fans. Like, even in this film, Bride of Chucky, there were a lot of homages to film noir and other horror films that came before. I'd never seen a horror film before I met Don, and now he's always like, oh, you have to see Omen, and then we see the new one, and we see the old one, side by side, you know, to compare them. And I was in a movie called Initiation of Sarah, and we had to see the original one with Kay Lenz, and he's really loves horror films. I think in Hollywood there's sort of, sometimes people think horror films are the bastard, red-headed stepchild of filmmaking, but really there's a lot of artistry that goes into making an amazing horror film, which you could see up on the screen here today, and in I think all of the Chucky movies.
Yeah. I think you could actually elevate any script. I think that's something these two do every time. And it doesn't mean you're not messing with the writing as much, but you're really taking it to a place where people, I mean, when Piper Laurie was nominated for an Oscar, not that Oscars matter, but she got nominated for Carrie. And that tells me that there might even be a little role in nomination in the next Chucky for a young man or a young woman.
All right, we only have time for a few more questions. I saw one here, and back there. We'll try to get to those. Go ahead.
Miss Arnett, what was your favorite scene in the film?
Mine?
Yes.
What was your favorite scene?
I love that you just called me Miss Arnett. That's fantastic to me. I would like to say, the Arquettes are not French, we are Occitania. Occitania, which is the South Provence of France. Pre the Gauls. Not that I have anything wrong with French people, but I don't like the way they run their government. It happened for a while. No, my favorite scene in the movie probably is, I love it towards the end when we think Chucky has come around finally, and you know, he puts the ring on her finger, and then he satisfies us once again by being a total prick. And I think that was good. That was a good moment. It solidified who he is, and we don't really want him to warm up, do we?
I love that your character is so pussy whipped. I say get down on the floor and you get down on the floor. That's the way it should be, relationships.
90% of heterosexual males are complete subservient pigs.
Another question?
Yeah, so Brad and Jennifer, you know, voice acting for you two is such an important part of your career right now. When you were first starting, had you thought that was going to go that way, or that you'd be able to experience that? And do you like it, as opposed to being directly on screen?
Well, I think we kind of, in a way, answered that question because it's a lot more fun when you're doing things with people. And most of the time, when you're doing voice acting, you're doing it by yourself. I mean, it's not like you can't have fun, but it's working with people. Connection is really what it's all about. you can really, I mean, you know, you can play by yourself, but wouldn't you rather play with somebody else?
What are we talking about here?
The Chucky, doing the voiceover for the Chucky movie just really swelled me. I do a lot of voiceover now. I play Bonnie in Family Guy, and I do a lot of cartoons, but it was like a real acting job when I'm working with Brad, and I was trying to like rise to his level, and I feel like we have a real connection and a real relationship after doing 2 movies together. But the great thing is, though, about the voiceover, what I loved about it, we do the entire movie, and then everybody else went off, and they were on location for 2 months, and they're getting rained on and having all these stunts that they have to do. And we just basically worked for a few hours one day, and then we're home, and then we get to see all the things that our characters do, the dolls. Oh, one of the things that bothered me, though, about my doll, I thought Chucky was adorable. My doll looked like she was 40 years old. She looked so much older than him. Oh, and she was inexpressive. And they said Chucky, the Chucky doll they've been working on for a long time, so he had 36 muscles on his face. Oh. And I think Tiffany, she had like, envy. I don't know, she had like 16. So I think you noticed that she doesn't have nearly as many expressions as he does. So in the next movie, they actually gave me sort of a Hollywood makeover. Did you say cock?
No, they promised?
Oh, they gave me a Hollywood makeover, and I had more muscles and more people to work me. But still, I mean, Chucky is the star of the movie. Tiffany really is sort of a doll come lately.
Well, it's what's my favorite of the series. I thought it was a real love story, and what you said about, you know, taking Bride of Frankenstein and making it, you know, having it be this homage to it was beautiful and worked better than most of all the comedic horror films that I have ever seen. That one is way my favorite, and I was shocked when they had sex. I didn't think I was going to be, but I sat in that movie and I went, no, they can't do that. I was really, really shocked.
But then the next movie where Chucky has to give a sperm sample, he's totally used to it.
Yeah,
he's like,
by then it's over.
All right, okay.
All right, 3 more questions I'm going to try to get to. I missed you, and then the lady on the left, and then the gentleman in the plaid shirt. What's your question?
This question goes out to Brad, Jennifer, and the glamorous George from The Wedding Singer.
Oh, stop. What was the question?
Was there a certain costume or character that felt closest to you? Sure.
Oh, ever?
In your career, was there a certain costume that felt closest to you?
Sure. They all are close.
Yeah.
You're wearing them.
Bound.
Yeah.
Yes, bound. She was bound. So sexy.
You know, sometimes costumes really inform you. You know, I mean, there's just something about just the way you wear them, what you've got to do. And I think in Lord of the Rings, first of all, people were falling over. Everybody wore dresses. So you're like falling over your dresses. And I had to like hold this thing to go anywhere, because otherwise I would fall down. So, and it kind of like really informed my character, so then I was just walking like that. And so I would say that costume fed me the most of all the costumes.
Well, the very first thing I do when I get a movie part is I say, what will this character wear? Like, what's her favorite color? What is she into? And I feel like once I get the costume, then I really sort of get the character. And I did love the costumes in Bride of Chucky. And in Seed of Chucky, I wore a lot of my own clothes. And Bound, Alexis was talking about Bound. Everything in that movie is pretty much my own clothes. I really try to strong-arm the costume people, and I bring a whole suitcase full of my stuff, and I'm like, oh, I think I should wear this or that, or I'll go to thrift shops and I'll find like, oh, I think this hat really expresses the character. And so I like when it's a collaboration between myself and the costumer, because I think that really does help, because what a person puts on in the morning says a lot about who they are.
They do say, makeup people often say, that they're hair actors. I did a film with Jerry Orbach, and apparently he's nothing until he gets his pompadour up, and then he becomes this guy. But you know, you mentioned The Wedding Singer. Recently I just worked again with Adam on a film called Blended. I'm the only character from The Wedding Singer who's in it, but at the end I play, at the climax, it's like a family movie. God bless you. It'll cover all the bases. And there's like a scene at the end where there's kids playing a baseball game, and George all of a sudden is there for no reason, playing dum 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 on the keyboard, and Hava Nagila and a couple other songs. But I said to them when they were going to hire me, you know, I'm a little different physically now, and they're like, that's fine. So they put me in a bunch of wool in the Alabama, where is it? Georgia, in the Georgia sun. And for about 5 days, and then shot the last day, I was ready to kill someone. And he did kind of do the greatest thing in the world, which is so against, like, I could have called Screen Actors Guild and had him sued. But he basically was giving me, even though he wasn't directing it, Frank Karachi, who directed The Wedding Singer, did it, but he was giving me on a microphone from across a baseball field line readings. Absolute line readings, like, do it like this and say this, you know, faster, freckle face, like a total out-of-sounder voice. I was like, fine. Because in the long run, I'm there to satisfy myself, the audience, but really the director. And I've made the biggest mistakes. I was cut almost completely out of Californication episode because I decided I was going to rewrite everything. The director they had hired that they allowed me to. Of course, I went to editing. And of course, writers have a problem with that. What if that episode had won an Emmy? Who would they have thanked? The writers or me? So I gotta watch it as an actor. I gotta mind my P's and Q's. You can do only as much as you could get away with, but you really don't want to step on anyone else's work. So.
On the left.
My question is for Jennifer and Brad. Jennifer, I love you on Brad and Chucky and also on El Padrino.
Oh, thank you.
But my question is, are your babies 100% yours? And for Brad, can you laugh like Chucky?
What?
Can you laugh like Chucky?
Do I laugh like Chucky?
Can you, Chucky?
God.
Yes, my babies are 100% mine. They always have been. They always will be.
Mine too!
All right, our last question, the gentleman in the plaid shirt.
Brett, one of my favorite horror movies of all time is Exorcist 3. Just like Exorcist 3 and Chucky, you do such a great job of coming up with a voice for these characters. Can you tell us what your process is, or how did you come up with the Chucky voice, and maybe with Exorcist 3 as well?
I'm a very slow line learner. So I spend a lot of time walking around learning lines. And as you walk, play, mess around, and soon your voice starts doing other things. Yeah, so it's just play. I like accents. I'm a little insecure. I was certainly when I was younger, and accents and different voices allow me to hide a little, and I can be a little freer. It's only now that I'm getting older that I'm a lot more comfortable being myself, playing things closer, a little bit more naked. That make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
One of the reasons why I think people love Chucky and have loved Chucky for over 20 years is Brad's interpretation of Chucky is that he plays him very real. He approaches the character the same way as he would approach a character in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, for example. I remember in Speed of Chucky, there's a really long speech where Chucky talks about how much he loves being a doll. It's a speech about his raison d'etre. And I remember when we were doing it, he was like, I can't get it, it's not quite right. And then he was doing it over and over again, and then he went out into the hall, and he was working on it. He's like, I'm really sorry, this is such an important speech for the trajectory of Chucky's character. And I was so impressed because most voiceover artists, they come in, they do it a couple times, they'd be like, you got it right, great, gotta go. And I just thought that he showed such integrity, and Chucky was such an important character to him, just like a full-fledged character that was not a little rubber plastic doll.
Yeah.
Do you remember that day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
I'm trying to pass the microphone on to somebody else. I'm telling you, Don Mancini, who created the Chucky movies, would have loved to be here tonight.
Yeah.
He says really good stuff about the movie.
Well, thank you all for coming to Screamfest tonight of Ears and Beers with Brian and Chucky. Thank you, Brad, Alexis, and Jennifer for being here with us.